Hi guys, James at RampantLionReviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to stick to Sweden, but we're going to head a little bit north this time and revisit a brewery that I first introduced you guys to a couple of months ago, and I was quite impressed with the last beer that I had from them. It was called the Smooth Sailing Porter, and it was just a really quite nice example of the style actually, and we're going to stick to the dark side of things for this review. So for this one we are going to head up to Uppsala once again. Very pretty city that I do recommend you visit if you get the chance. Only an hour on the train from Stockholm, and we're having a taste of my second beer from Upp Brewing. So this one is the Düster Schwarzbier, and it comes in at 5.5% ABV. So basically this one is a dark lager beer if you like. I really, my whole love of beer started off with the German Rauch beers, the Bamberg Rauch beers, and when I was in the Czech Republic about a year ago, 2 years ago now, I really got back into my lager styles of beer. So, there's kind of equivalence between the Czech lagers and the German lagers, if you like. So in the Czech Republic, they have the Svetli, the Leitsack, the Cherny and the Tmavi. And then in Germany, they have the Helles, the Dunkel and the Schwarzbier. So the Czech ones, the Svetli, if I remember correctly, is the equivalent to the Helles. The Leitsack is the equivalent to a Vienna lager, an amber lager. I might be getting those two the wrong way around, but you've got the Cherny, which is the equivalent to the German Dunkel, and then you've got the Tmavi, which is the equivalent of the German Schwarzbier. In my experience, the Czech lagers tend to be a little bit more bready, whereas the German ones are just a little bit more kind of crisp in their malt bases, if you like. But I think the lager beers are kind of underrated. All of the breweries these days seem to be focusing on producing, IPAs and New England IPAs and all of these kind of things. So it is quite cool actually to see breweries bringing the German styles into it a little bit more, because I've always enjoyed them, so I'm a little bit biased that way. But there's a good number of Schwarzbiers have been released into Sweden over the last little while, and the standard actually seems to be really quite good. And there's a good number of black IPAs as well, which seems to be a bit of a forgotten style. The Swedish breweries actually are quite good at pumping out dark beers, so I'm very curious to see how this one turns out. At 5.5%, I would say this one is a little bit higher in alcohol than you'd find from the standard Czech and German ones, but I'm sure it will be a good beer, and hopefully you guys enjoy my take on it as well. This is a style that I really quite enjoy reviewing for you, so we'll just need to see how we get on. Of course, Kustritzer, the German Kustritzer, is probably the best known example of this particular style of beer. But anyway, as is usual with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Upp Brewing before. No doubt I will add some more at some point in the fairly near future. There's all the usual social media. If you want to see more beer reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel of course has a geography based tagging system, so you can go into the home page and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, prefecture, whatever it is you're interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Swedish beers that I've reviewed for you. That's constantly being added to, and as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, to tell you a little bit about Upp Brewing then, just a short one for this because these guys are quite new. So Upp Brewing, as I mentioned earlier on, are based in Uppsala in Sweden, just a little bit to the north of Stockholm, and the company was founded by two friends, Chris and Travis, back in the summer of 2017. So Chris is German from Hamburg, and he came from a background in working with paraffin and also parachute packing before he became a brewer at Slottskälen's Brewery in Uppsala back in 2013. That's probably the oldest of the craft breweries in Uppsala, if I remember correctly, but there's a few others like Brass Tacks and things that have come along a little bit later on. Travis, on the other hand, comes from Australia, and he worked in the mines as a mechanical engineer before getting into brewing, but the brewing capacity that these guys had started off at 40,000 litres, but it's been scaled up considerably since then, and they now have their beers available through the regular range in Systembolaget here. Now I think their whole range is actually available nationwide as well. This was the first beer that they released nationwide, and apparently this one can be found in pretty much every Systembolaget throughout the whole country. So they are producing this one on a pretty big scale actually. So that's kind of cool for a brewery that is only 2 years old. But I think in fairness, when other breweries like Opigårds and all of this would have come along, the paperwork for them to get into the rules and stuff like that to get into Systembolaget would have been a lot more difficult. They have been gradually relaxing the rules to help craft breweries over the last couple of years. But as I said, I've tried one of their beers before. The smooth sailing porter was very nice. I'll need to make sure that I try something from the lighter end of the spectrum for my next review from these guys. But as I say, cool to come across another German style of beer that I quite enjoy. So yeah, that's all you really need to know about Upp Brewing for the moment. That was all I was really able to find on them actually, because it's, you know, they're a very new brewery. But if you want to learn more, check out the brewery website in the description below. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer and Untappd pages to see all the different beers that they've done. So yeah, let's get on and actually have a taste of this beer then. So you know, the artwork on this one is quite nice, quite similar actually to what they had before. I was actually getting a bit annoyed with my camera when I was trying to set up this video, because you can see the Upp is actually squint, and I thought the camera wasn't quite at the right angle, so I was like, what the hell's going on here? But it is actually the Upp on the bottle that is squint. But you can see that's also on the bottle cap there as well. You've got the nice black and red for black, yellow and red, the German colours, and there you can see the Prussian eagle on the back of that there, which is pretty cool there. But it says on the back here, German style black Pilsner. Now, I don't know if you really can say that, because the Pilsner and the Helles lagers are a little bit different. I've never, I have seen one or two breweries kind of saying it's a black Pilsner beer, so maybe they are using a little bit of Pilsner malt in there along with a bit of black malt that you would expect for this. So it's interesting that, because normally I wouldn't say that this beer is a Pilsner. To me, a Pilsner or a Pilsen is a completely separate style from the Helles, because the Helles is the Munich lager, whereas the Pilsner is the one specifically from Pilsen in the Czech Republic, Pilsner Urquell, for example. So that's an interesting point to make about this beer. The name, of course, Düster. I'm not sure whether you would pronounce it Düster, because there's a few rules about when you turn the ST into a ST, but the word apparently means like darkness, melancholy kind of thing, so quite a good name actually for this beer. But you can just see the outline as well of the Uppsala cathedral there, and I forget whether it's Lund or Uppsala that has the biggest cathedral, but Uppsala has the biggest brick cathedral, and I think Lund has the biggest stone cathedral in Northern Europe. So yeah, kind of interesting. But it says that this beer was bottled on the 26th of June 2019, and usually these beers have a little bit of a kind of long, you know, you need to put them in the bottle to age them a little bit before they're ready, but it should be pretty nice this. So without further ado, let's get it out and we'll get on with the tasting. It's 5.5% German style Schwarzbier. So as I mentioned earlier, usually the Czech versions of these lager beers are a little bit more kind of bready, sometimes a little bit more biscuity, whereas the German ones tend to be a little bit drier and crisper in my experience. And probably the kind of pinnacle example of this style, if you like, is the Kostritzer Schwarzbier, which is from the former East Germany actually. I forget exactly where it was from, but they still produced that during the communist times as well, which is kind of interesting, and that's probably the best known example of a Schwarzbier today. But I've never seen it in Sweden, right enough. It's quite easy to get that back home in Scotland. But as you can see, and as you would expect from a Schwarzbier, this one is poured a lovely sort of very dark kind of chestnutty colour. It's almost ebony, rosewoody kind of colour, but if you put the light through it you will see it is actually quite ruby, this beer. You can see there's a solid third finger of a frothy, I would say very light kind of beige head on this one. One or two big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass and a few little ones just heading up towards the bottom of that head there. But you know, overall it looks pretty nice. Okay guys, sorry about the edit there, camera issues, but let's take a little look at the aroma on this beer then. So with this one, you're going to notice straight away, it actually comes across as being quite bready, to be honest, and the fruity quality that this beer has is really nice as well. So we'll stick to the malt base first then. I mean, straight away, out of this one, you can definitely pick up a little bit of the roasty, toasty black malt in there, but there is a little bit of a kind of brown, bready quality to this one, and I would say that this beer really leans a little bit towards that bready side of thing, because, and as I said earlier, the Czech versions of these beers tend to be a little bit more bready than the German ones, but this one isn't as bready as some of the Czech ones that I've kind of come across, to be honest. I would say that it actually leans a little bit more towards the German side of things, and I mean, you would expect that with name and stuff like that, it does have that little bit of roasty crispness that isn't quite as apparent in the Czech versions. Usually the Czech ones are a little bit kind of smoother than the German ones, I think. But yeah, you've got a lovely kind of brown bready quality. This one, it's almost like a kind of well-fired bread crust actually that you get out of this beer, which is quite nice. A little bit of an almost German rye bready quality to the beer too. But you can pick up, there might be a little teensy bit of a kind of toasty brown sugar. There's a little bit of that in this beer. You can really pick that up. But otherwise, the malt base is kind of very straight up. A little bit of roasty black malt, like I said, a well-fired bread crust, some kind of brown bread, rye bready type qualities, and a little bit of a kind of biscuity, brown sugary sort of thing to it as well. On the fruity side of things, it's quite interesting because you do get a good little bit of sort of red fruity and berry kind of qualities. There's a little bit of a blackcurranty, blackberry type thing in there, and a little touch of a kind of figgy note as well, which is kind of interesting. I would guess that with this beer, you know, they might use, you know, maybe they would use something a little bit like Williamette or something like that to give it a little bit of fruitiness, but I would suspect that they probably are just using, you know, Hallertau or Tettnanger hops, you know, the typical German ones. The other option, of course, would be Satz, but there's a good number of German hops these days. You've got Hercules, Perl, a few other ones in there that are slightly different. Mandarina Bavaria is one of the higher alpha ones. Hallertau Blanc. You've got all of these kind of hops coming out of Germany now, but this one comes across as really quite nice. It's got a nice juicy fruitiness to it. On the hoppy side of things, you've got a little bit of that typical sort of German noble earthiness in there. It's got that sort of light, almost sweet earthy quality there. There's a little bit of a floral quality to the beer, and also a little bit of grassiness as well. But overall, in terms of its aroma, I think this one definitely leans a little bit more towards the German side of things. The breadiness has a good balance with the roasty black malts, but also a little touch of sweetness in there. I would say the sweetness is something that you might get a little bit more from the Czech side of things. So yeah, pretty much all the Germans I've spoken to, they always say that the Czech beers taste very, very bready actually, which is kind of an interesting thing to say too. But yeah, as I always say, take a little bit of time and just enjoy the aroma of the beer before you get stuck into it. But we're going to have a taste of this one now and just see how we get on. So this one is the Düster Schwarzbier at 5.5% from Upp Brewing in Uppsala in Sweden. Let's get stuck in. Slanje, skål, prost. That's pretty good actually. What you will notice about this beer that was a little bit of a surprise there, when it comes in, it's the fruit. The fruity side of this beer comes out straight away, and I wasn't expecting that from this at all. Usually, when you have a beer like this, I would always say that it's the malt base and the kind of bready qualities that come there, then you start to get the fruits more into the aftertaste. But when I took that beer in for the first sip, it really had almost quite a sharp red fruity note to it. That was kind of interesting and quite unusual for this style, to be honest. And I mean, yeah, in some ways it could be the glass a little bit, because normally, of course, you would probably drink one of these beers out of a stein or something like that. A black lager beer, you would drink it out of one of the steins. And, you know, it's more of a kind of gulp beer, so maybe the way that this glass makes me take it in makes it a little bit sharper in the beginning. But, you know, I always try and stick to the same glasses for the most part, because it's you know, one less variable. But it's a nice Schwarzbier, this one. You will, if you like this style, you will certainly enjoy this one, and it's really quite easy drinking, I have to say, as well. But yeah, I think in terms of whether this is a Czech Tmavi or a German Schwarzbier, to me this one really leans more towards the German side of things actually. It's definitely got that slightly kind of lighter thing. I always find the Czech beers, they come across, they're very easy to drink, but they feel a little bit thicker, whereas the German versions are a little bit more kind of crisp and wet, and this one really is a little bit crisper and wetter when it comes to this style. So most definitely a German Schwarzbier rather than a Czech Tmavi, if you like. But when one of the brewers is German, it's not surprising that they've got this one kind of spot on, to be honest with you. I've had a few beers, Schwarzbiers from Swedish breweries that have been a little bit more like the Czech Tmavis, but they've called them Schwarzbiers. So it's really it's an interesting point to make that, but this one is really quite nice actually. If you like this style, you will enjoy this beer. But let's try and break down the flavour of this beer a little bit more then. So yeah, in the middle of your palate then, you'll just feel that nice bready quality. That just blankets the middle of your tongue. You'll get a little bit of the toasty black malts in there. I would suspect that it might be something more along the lines of Carafa or something like that they've used in here. Probably, going by the way the malts come out, I wouldn't be surprised if it's a Weirmann malt from Bamberg, because it really has that typical German smoothness to it, if you like, that Brauhaus smoothness, as I always like to say. But yeah, you get that, a nice little bit of that roasty, kind of toasty, bread crusty kind of quality. That just blankets the middle of your palate. On top of that, you get the more kind of almost rye bready type qualities. There is a nice breadiness to this beer, and in the very centre of your palate there is almost just a little bit of a, it's almost like a kind of toasty caramel. It's a little bit too oily just to be like a biscuit flavour, although in fairness, as you move out from the centre of your palate, you'll get some more kind of biscuity notes out of this beer. But the way, pardon me, that malt base goes together is really pretty damn nice actually. I like how the way that this malt base comes out. The breadiness isn't quite as thick as you might get from some of the Czech equivalents, and as I say, that's the real thing for me that makes this a German Schwarzbier rather than a Czech Tmavé. But you know, as I mentioned earlier, it's not surprising when one of the guys is German that this beer is definitely more like the German one. So yeah, but to me this beer gets a thumbs up. I really like it, and to me it's the malt base that makes this, but in fairness you would expect that of dark beers. But yeah, on the hoppy side of things then, so back corners of the palate, you get a little bit of that typical sort of noble hoppy earthiness there. It's really nice actually, and it suits the beer well. There's a little bit of that earthiness there. It comes across as being a little bit dry, but as you come further forward along the sides of the palate, you can feel it gradually evolves just to be a little bit more kind of floral, but it's quite a subtle floral quality that comes out of this beer, but typical of those noble hops. As you go round the front curve of the palate, it's just a little bit lighter and more grassy, I would say. But then behind the front curve of the palate, that's where you get that nice oily bubble, where you get the juicy fruity esters just rolling out of the beer. As I mentioned earlier, when you take this beer in, it comes across as a little bit sharp in its fruity character, which is a bit of a surprise, but then the further you go into the aftertaste, the juiciness, the sharpness just kind of goes away, and you get this lovely kind of juiciness, but also there's still a little bit of that sharpness lingering there, I would say, with the fruity side of things. But yeah, that's nice how it all goes together. So for me, in the beginning it's got a little bit of an almost raisiny sharpness to it, but then as it rolls out a little bit more, it starts to lean a little bit more towards black currants, blackberries, maybe even a little touch figgy or something like that actually. So I don't know if they might have used just a little touch of Williamette or something in here, but I suspect if they'd used Williamette, the floral character might be a little bit more pronounced, and the way that the other parts of the hops come out in this beer is quite similar. You know, it probably is just noble hops, Hallertauer Tettnanger or something like that. But I mean, overall, in terms of its flavour profile, this beer really has everything that you would expect from a German Schwarzbier, but the fruitiness is just a little bit quirky compared to some of the other ones that you're going to come across. But to me, for the style, gets a big thumbs up. I mean, it's a nice, sessionable, easy drinking beer, this one. If you like this style, I'm pretty sure you will enjoy this one. So I have to say, I think Systembolaget made a good choice on this, and this is a style that seems to be getting a good little bit of popularity in Sweden at the moment. So yeah, cool to see it make its way to Systembolaget. On the mouthfeel side of things, I would say that this beer it's probably at the top end of light body, to be honest with you. Carbonation's very smooth. Overall, I would say, yeah, this beer, it's not overly crisp, but it does have a nice kind of clean sort of mouthfeel to it. It really leans towards the wet side of things, and it has that little bit of crispness in there. The malt base has a really, really good balance between being smooth and bready. There's a little bit of sweetness in there, and also a little bit of the roasty character underneath. The further you go into the aftertaste, you'll feel the malt base just dry out a little bit, but it's very well balanced between kind of roasty qualities, sweetness, and smoothness as well. They've got the malt base kind of spot on in this one, in my opinion. But you've got some nice kind of hoppy qualities to the beer as well. I think in terms of bitterness, you're maybe talking about 25 IBUs, something like that, maybe a little touch more, and you've got a nice juicy fruity note to this one. But as I say, the quirkiness of this beer is how the fruitiness comes in, and it's quite sharp. And then it just gradually kind of moves to be a little bit more light and you know, light and juicy, if that makes sense there. But a very nice example of a German Schwarzbier, and I certainly wouldn't hesitate to drink this one again. As I say, it's cool to see these German styles of beer getting a little bit more kind of publicity, and lagers in general, because you know, lagers are a Czech style of beer as well. I think it's fair to say that. A lot of people forget about the Czech ones. They always think about Germany when it comes to the lager styles of beer. But overall, a really, really nice beer, this one, and I'm glad that I was able to review this for you. So I hope you guys have enjoyed my take on it as well. So yeah, as always, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Upp Brewing as well. Do give me some other Schwarzbier recommendations that you'd like, because this is a style that I enjoy, and I would love to do more of them. Give me some Dunkel and Helles recommendations as well. Those are styles that I always enjoy visiting. Doppelbock as well is another big style of mine. Basically any lager style of beer, I will be interested in reviewing it. I need to do some more Vienna lagers as well, in fact. But yeah, let me know some recommendations in the comment section below, and make sure you check out this beer, available in pretty much any Systembolaget here in Sweden these days. But let's leave it at that. This one is the Düster, or Düster, however you actually pronounce it, from Upp Brewing, a Schwarzbier at 5.5% from Uppsala here in Sweden. Really nice example of the style, so go and check it out for yourself. Quite cheap as well. This one's only about 20 crowns per bottle, so definitely worth picking up a few of these if you're wanting a nice sessionable beer. But until the next time, Slanja just now, and I'll catch you guys later. Slanja, skål, cheers.